than there were before. In short, how is it that we can explain why trickle-down economics does not work? Why doesn't wealth trickle down from the rich to the poor? There are a fixed amount of natural resources in the world, and those who own the resources, land, air, water, and so on, are able to charge higher and higher prices for them as an economy develops. In order to understand that, I think it would be useful to consider a fictitious example of what would happen if we lived in a society in which there was only one oasis that had all the water, which everyone had to come for their water supply. If a single person owned that water supply, that oasis, we would all be forced to pay as much money as we were able to for that water. Now, further imagine that if you lived in that society and you were having to pay huge amounts for some resource that could in fact be owned by all because it came from nature, and there's no particular reason for one person to own it. After a while, or perhaps even in short order, you would begin to feel intense resentment, and you would begin discussing among your fellows, what should we do about this? And you can imagine that there would in fact be an eruption of violence as people began to try to overthrow the people who owned that resource and take it.
You take away their resources so you can have it, so what do they get left? And as time goes on and that resource no longer is so valuable, gold, nobody really cares that much about gold these days, which is what the conquistadores were after. But today those same countries, a lot of them have oil. And so we took away all their gold, we destroyed their cultures, and now we're saying, and now oil's the big one, and we're going to take that too, or gas, or whatever, or water, whatever. And yeah, you perpetuate this terrible system of poverty and the system of desperation and anger.
Terrorism is directly linked to our policies with resources. In a number of these countries, the governments are authoritarian, are dictators, and they're supported by the West because we think that this is the way to protect our access to the resources. And for the population, they've associated dictator and the West.
It's very interesting that if you look at the societies with the least equal distribution of income, they tend to be the most violent. There's a very small correlation between absolute poverty and crime. There's a strong correlation between unequal income distribution and crime. So you look at the poorest societies, they're not at all the ones that are the most violent. It's the ones that have the biggest discrepancy in incomes that are the most violent.